Well, it's New Year's Eve, and the proud Locked On MLB tradition continues. We're bringing on the host of the World Series champion to say goodbye to this, well, great year for them.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are now the #1 sports podcasting network. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they call it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But the best way to get a hold of me is right here on the YouTubes, and use that hashtag EverydaySully so we can find what you're saying. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com. Place your NFL live bets all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Well, if you're following the show, and I know I've been following it, you know that we have a tradition here on the final day of the calendar year. Which is being dropped on December 31st. Those of you who will subscribe to Locked On Dodgers may have seen some of this before, but it's a proud tradition that on the final day of the calendar year, we bring in the host of the team, the Locked On show for the team that won the World Series. Boy, did that come out smoothly. It's my great honor to bring onto the show, I think it's his first time on the show, one of the two new hosts of Locked On Dodgers. Let's hear it. Travis Rogers. Travis, the Tarantula Rogers. I've now given you your new nickname. we realized he needed a good nickname there, but yes, Travis Rogers, you were one of the new two co-hosts of the Locked On Dodgers. Hey, welcome to the show, and I'm guessing you had a decent October.
Thank you, Sully. It's nice to be on your pod. We had a wonderful October. We had a back-to-back wonderful Octobers. It is a very good time to be a Dodger fan, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's just talk at first, because I had a couple of people there's a couple of Dodger fans on the YouTube message board. I'm looking at you, Sammy Boy Smith, who basically said, he was going on saying that the Dodgers weren't losing to anybody. There wasn't any doubt. They had that 2004 Red Sox swagger. And I pointed out that 2004 Red Sox team nearly got swept. They were 3 outs away from being
Right.
swept, staring Mariano Rivera down. And by the way, the next day they were 6 outs away from losing in 5. And the next day, the Yankees had the pennant-winning run at the plate, okay? So don't give me this, they weren't losing anybody. They were a millimeter, and I use millimeter because they were in Canada, they were a millimeter away from losing the World Series.
Yeah, if there's a way to get closer than losing a game, a series, a year than facing Mariano Rivera, then the Dodgers found a way to do it, because It was the length of Will Smith's cleat that they won the World Series. And Sully, I'll go back before that. Let's go back to the DS when Orion Kerkering threw the ball to the backstop. Dodgers could have lost that game, and they had to go back to Philadelphia and play a Game 5 that they were on the precipice multiple times. You know,
I'll go you one earlier than that.
Yeah.
I'll go one earlier than that. It was either Game 1 or 2 in Philadelphia. In the ninth inning, the Phillies were rallying, and Edman at second base. It was Game 2. And Edman made a poor throw to first that Freddie Freeman picked out of the ground. He made a terrific play to end the ball game. If he doesn't pick that ball out, that game's tied, and the Dodgers bullpen, lest we forget, was a gigantic middle of the Riddler's costume question mark at that point. So don't give me this, hey, we had it all the time. Let me tell you, Sammy boy, I want to go back. I want to be Superman, spin the world back, and go to your house when that fly ball went and they had the Bad News Bears collision. How many 70s movies references can I make in one day? Had the Bad News Bears collision, and everybody on the planet Earth was saying, and the ball's going to pop out. That's how the World Series ends, with a collision in left field. You're going to look me in the eye and say, we had it in the bag.
Yeah, well, and since we're reminiscing about all the close calls, the ball that lodged in the bottom of the wall in Toronto, if that lands, since I like your line, I'm just going to flat plagiarize you. If that's a millimeter higher or lower, it doesn't stick in the wall, it bounces, and the game probably ends right there. These were a million different times. I like, go back to game 2 that you mentioned. That was the first time we saw Roki Sasaki in a high leverage relief situation, and nobody knew whether or not he was going to be able to do that. That was a brand new experience. I think part of the problem is that they just pounded the Brewers so dramatically that you forget what happened before and you forget what happened after.
But I'll even take you to task a little bit there. That game 1, they had the bases loaded, and they brought in Trinan for reasons that scientists and philosophers and poets will never be able to figure out. And he threw an inside pitch that was, we're in Milwaukee, so we can use inches now, was an inch away from being a hit batter that would have tied the game in game 1. If they blow game 1 lead, the whole tenet of that series is completely changed. If Freeman doesn't pick that ball up, or Keckering remembers how many outs there were, I mean, this is so many things went the right way. And here's how, we'll get to a little bit about the long-term ramifications of this remarkable postseason that we had. It wasn't just the World Series. There were so many brilliant games, including the Tigers and the Mariners series, including that game 7 between Seattle and Toronto, and the game 5 between Seattle and Toronto. But the fact of the matter is, there were so many great games in the postseason that when they had that 18-inning marathon, and people were saying, is this the best World Series game ever played? By the end, it wasn't the best game played that week.
No.
Let alone the best of all time. The game I was at was the game where Ohtani threw 6 shutout innings and hit 3 home runs in the same game to clinch the pennant. And does that make the top 5 games of this year's postseason? It's not on the medal stand. It's not on the medal stand.
As far as like competitive games, no. As far as individual accomplishments, you might have witnessed the greatest baseball individual performance in the history of the sport. But as far as whether the game was ever in question, no doubt about that.
But that gets, I'm going to make another weird movie reference. I'll push this to the 90s instead of the 70s. That was the quiz show of games, because Quiz Show is a great movie, and it came out the same year as Pulp Fiction, Forrest Gump, and Shawshank Redemption, and The Lion King, and Speed. There are all these great movies that came out the same year. The Quiz Show kind of gets lost in the shuffle. Hoop Dreams, all these amazing movies, and that game where Ohtani it basically gave us a game that we didn't even dare think of, not even playing PlayStation, and suddenly that game, when you start listing the brilliant games of this year's postseason, and there was a game where a guy threw 6 shutout innings and hit 3 home runs in the same game.
Yeah,
and clinch the pennant.
And the question coming into that game, of course, was what's wrong with Ohtani? Why can't he get any hits? Why is he not doing this? Should he not be a guy that hits on the same day that he pitches? Should he not pitch the day or hit the day after? All of these crazy questions. Like, you ever seen this guy play before? Like even Shohei Ohtani will have days where he strikes out a lot. Even Shohei Ohtani might go 3 or 4 games where he looks a little lost at the plate, but don't worry, that's Ohtani up there. He'll figure it out. So, and he did, and he went from what's wrong with him to winning the NLCS MVP in about 3 hours. That happened awfully quickly. And then, you mentioned it briefly, Sully. The 18-inning game had 100 different moments that didn't make any sense. It was the final time we ever saw Clayton Kershaw. And the greatest high wire act, the most nauseating at bat I've ever watched in my entire life, because Dodger fans everywhere were saying exactly what I was saying, which is it can't end like this. It cannot end with Clayton Kershaw getting his head kicked in one last time in a World Series game. And I've said this 100 times on the Locked On Dodgers pod. My everydayers will know this for sure. He threw 8 pitches in that at bat. 6 of them were balls. Yep. And then he still somehow found a way to get out of it. He gets the little ground ball. That got lost to history. Edgardo Henriquez, who could not find a strike zone to save his life, pitched 3 innings where he was lights out, and he was the second least surprising pitcher because here comes Will Klein, who's got a lifetime ERA of 6 trillion. He comes in and throws 4 innings where he can't get touched, and they win the game in the bottom of the 18th inning. Freddie Freeman hits the second walk-off home run in the World Series of his career, and this one's like, oh yeah, cool, but the grand slam against the Yankees the year before was better. There was just so many of these things in these moments, and most of them happened in that game because it was 2 games in one. It gave the Dodgers a 2-game hangover because they're an older team. They were just sleepwalking through games 4 and 5. They finally got it together, and we know what happened after that. But it was a series of events. Kershaw's going to blow it. No, Henriquez is going to blow it. No, Klein's going to blow it. And none of them blew it. They ended up winning the game in 18 innings.
And Edman became an unsung hero for a couple of his relay throws. Yes. Throwing a runner. Forgive me, I'm doing some of this from memory. And I don't blame the Blue Jays runners for doing what they did because it required a perfect throw.
Both of them.
Yeah, but and they just happened to both times to get the perfect throw.
The play at third was not only an incredibly heads-up play, it was an incredibly good physical play to slide, to turn, to make a perfect throw to Muncy to get the out at third base. Teoscar Hernandez, Dodger fans were ready to, bang their head against the wall all season long because of how bad Hernandez had been in right field. And for that moment, he was
Roberto Clemente.
He was perfect. He makes a perfect throw to Edman, who makes a perfect throw to Will Smith to cut a runner down at home to save the game. It was that we could do a 3-hour pod on Game 3 alone and all the moments that just you never saw coming.
But we can't. We got to go to commercial. And when we come back, I want to talk about that dreaded word for anyone who does not live in Southern California: three-peat.
Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better because every Friday night before the game tips off, FanDuel gives new fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new. We're talking boosts, bonuses, surprise, and the timing is perfect. Right before the games, right before the weekend starts. It's that little extra something to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. Every Friday, 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
Thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen of the day. Or maybe your first listen of the day is Locked On Dodgers. Well, we're both part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcasting network. Now, you already love Major League Baseball or the Dodgers, or maybe you hate listening to the Dodgers. That happens. Now, let's take it up a level. Let's go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On MLB or Locked On Dodgers without the advertisements. And no interruptions, member-only Discord access, and more, all just for $5 a month or $50 a year. To go to our show, sorry, buddy, go to lockedonmlb.supercast.com. I assume it's lockedondodgers.supercast.com for you. Look at that. Cal State Fullerton only accepts the brightest and the best. There you go. All right. Going into the postseason, when I predicted that the Phillies were going to win it all again, second straight year, I was wrong about that because I love their starting pitching. And what I thought the Achilles heel for the Dodgers was going to be was the bullpen. And guess what? I was correct. except let's give Dave Roberts a little pat on the back, or whoever it was. Let me give credit to the manager, just like you give credit to the director in a movie. Let's give credit to the manager here. They reversed course. They didn't pull a Jim Fregosi and say, hey, he was the one who got us here, and keep putting poor Mitch Williams on the mound. No, I said, you know what? If this is not working, I'll someday make it an analogy that is with this century. But they said, what? You know what? If this isn't working, let's mix it up. And you saw Sasaki being a closer. You saw Glasnow being a closer. You saw Yamamoto doing his Grover Cleveland Alexander, the 1926 World Series. How about that for being up to date?
You're going back, yeah.
I'm going back. Or Randy Johnson in the 2001 World Series, or Madison Bumgarner in the 2014. There's a tradition of that. And it's what a manager should do instead of the tyranny of the save. Well, who had most save? We pitch pitcher with most save. Instead, say, who's the best pitcher for this particular nanosecond? Yeah. He did it last year when he had to manage a rotation that had a bullpen game every 4 days. Today, he had to this year, he completely had to revamp his bullpen. And good on him. It worked.
Yes.
But also good on the Dodgers saying, maybe we need a closer.
I think they finally, I don't want to say figured something out, because I think they're the smartest guys in the sport. So I think they finally just decided to do it a little bit differently, because the criticism for Roberts, this is the sixth time they've been in the World Series fifth time they've been in the World Series in the last 10 years. And the criticism was always exactly what you were just describing, Sully, was, well, this is what led us to 103 wins, 105 wins, 111 wins. And this is the formula that works for us. Well, it works over the course of 162 games because big numbers add up to this amount of wins. But they finally altered their philosophy in the postseason last year. And they did it not because I think they had a philosophical change. They did it because they had no choice. They didn't have any starting pitchers to speak of. They basically had Yamamoto and they had Jack Flaherty. Those were the two guys that they could run out there. And after that, it was, you got to figure it. You can't game plan to throw 8 guys in a game. You can't do it. It's impossible. You can't do the matchup thing. You just kind of have to go with, like you said, who's the best guy right now tonight? The opposite happened this year, but it was the same thing. Instead of having no starting pitchers, you had no relief pitchers. So who are my 5 best guys? It's my 5 starting pitchers. I'll just pitch them. I'll just use those guys every single night. And Yamamoto, I don't know what he was channeling from what century. I don't know what they're teaching guys over in Japan, but it works because he comes over here and he absolutely is dominating. Blake Snell came out of the bullpen. Like you mentioned, Glasnow comes out of the bullpen. They turned Sasaki, who was just frankly not ready to pitch in Major League Baseball at the beginning of the season last year. He was just not very good, and he was overwhelmed. He's like this every night. He comes out and goes out on the mound. He's last we saw him before they sent him to the minor leagues to get healthy was him literally crying in the dugout. And then the guy comes back and he's tough as nails in the postseason. It was an amazing turn of events, but Dave Roberts finally decided, I need to just do what wins tonight. Here in Southern California, when the Angels made their run to the World Series a million years ago, yes, that actually happened. Mike Scioscia did. I remember there's a game against the Yankees where he pitched Francisco Rodriguez and Troy Percival, and Baggy's like, well, who are you going to use tomorrow? Because I don't have to worry about tomorrow. I had to win tonight. And I think that's the philosophy that more and more teams are going to employ in short series. Over the course of the season, you got to think long-term. You got to do all these things. But the Dodgers basically went to bleep it mode. We're just going to pitch our best guys tonight, and it worked.
Yeah, it did work. But by bringing in Diaz from the Mets, they can at least at this point, nail something down to say, all right, we know who's pitching the ninth, and he is someone, assuming he's going to stay healthy, that he is someone who you can absolutely count on to be lights out. By the way, one of those weird sort of trivia questions that you could win if you're doing 20 years from now. If someone asks what player led the Dodgers in saves when they won the World Series in 2025, the answer is Tanner Scott.
I know.
I mean, that's how weird it was. But
The Scott thing was, I think I am the last man on the island on this thing. I still think Tanner Scott's going to be really good next year. I don't know what was wrong with him. I don't know if it was mechanical, mental, physical. I don't know, but he's too good of a pitcher to have gone that badly that quickly. So I think.
And okay, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah. I think that they're going to have the left-right thing with Scott and with Diaz next year. And quite frankly, Sully, I was I wouldn't say surprised, but a little curious that they went back into the market again this year and got Diaz, because one of the things that Andrew Friedman has been fairly reluctant to do is pay relievers, right? They'll pay the guys, they'll pay Yamamoto, they'll pay Ohtani, they'll pay Freeman, they'll pay Betts. These guys are about as safe of a bet as there is when it comes to players. But relief pitchers, you know this, but everydayers know this. Those guys are good year, bad year, good year, bad year. They're all over the map. Even Diaz, who is terrific, he's had as many bad years as he has good years. He's kind of all over the place. So that they went in and paid Scott 4 years, what was it, $80 million or whatever, and it blew up on him. And then they went back the next year and kind of did a pretty similar deal to do it again. Surprised me a little bit. They obviously had a need that they needed to address, but that they addressed it in a similar way was a surprise to me.
Yeah, I just think it was a splash move as well, and also a little bit of, holy cow, can we do something about this? Because I don't want to have another postseason where we're moving stuff around like this. Last offseason question here. And by the way, another pitching factor that was different in the 24 as opposed to 25 was Ohtani was able to pitch.
Yeah,
Ohtani, you didn't have Ohtani. Now Kershaw basically became a mop-up man this year. I mean, he was kind of he was the Ben Casparius of this year's team. But good for him. But there's obviously there's the Tarek Skubal rumors that are going around that people are already lighting their torches and getting their pitchforks ready in case that happens. There's rumors that they may be trying to move Teoscar Hernandez while he still has value. What big move do you and I think is Michael Conforto still cashing a check with them? I mean,
no, he took his gun and ski mask and left town, and he's on the greener pastures.
I kind of lost track a little bit there. You must forgive me there.
I think as far as what they have left to do this offseason, they're still an outfielder short. It depends on what they want to do with Tommy Edman. Tommy Edman's ankle was bothering him all season long last year. He had a year that I don't think anybody was really pleased with, him included. So is Tommy Edman your second baseman, or is Tommy Edman an outfielder, or are you going to continue to kind of shuffle him in and out between the two spots? Because if he's in the outfield, you're a second baseman short. If he's at second base, you're an outfielder short. So you have to come up with something there. The Skubal thing, the people that I've talked about that have been really good at giving me little nuggets here and there, is as close to zero as you can get without being zero. That's not going to happen. The Teo thing is real. If they find somebody that wants to take Teo, I think that this is the perfect time to maybe get out of the Teoscar Hernandez business. If they end up keeping him, I don't think that's the end of the world either. He can still hit. He can still perform offensively. He's below the line defensively for sure. So maybe an outfielder, a corner outfielder, maybe a second baseman. But the Kyle Tucker thing I think is exceptionally unlikely. Not impossible, but unlikely. I think that the team that they have today, as we get ready to go into 2026, is going to be very similar to what they start opening day with.
And before we go to break, I'll just point out that we are recording this a little bit ahead of time, pulling back the curtain. So if just before New Year's Day, the Dodgers acquired Juan Soto and Aaron Judge for Ben Casparius and Teoscar Hernandez, then I think the people who hate the Dodgers may have a point.
I'd do that.
All right, we're just our New Year's Eve show we're doing here with Travis Rogers of Locked On Dodgers. A lot of people hate the Dodgers, and that's a good thing. People don't tend to hate bad teams. You don't hear people, you know what? Man, I hate the Pirates. The Pirates, those damn Pirates. Every single day. It's Pirates this, it's Pirates that.
Yeah.
And that's cruel because I happen to have a soft spot in my heart for the Pirates, and I want to see them do well. But the Dodgers, have, are as good a chance as any to try to get a three-peat. And people are, it's bad for baseball, da, 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 da. I've made this point many times on the show. The idea that we're even talking about a labor stoppage, work stoppage, the problem is not players versus owners. The problem is really 28 teams are, care about the luxury tax and 2 don't. And we're starting to see one, it may be down to 1 because the Cohen and the Mets are going like, how much money am I pouring in every month?
Right.
How much every year am I throwing in on this team? I got a casino I'm trying to build here. You know what? Maybe I should let Alonso and Diaz go, save a little bucks, and then get back to work on this thing here. So it's basically the Red Sox were making financial decisions, the Yankees, the Mets, all these teams. So it's the teams on the bottom who are taking revenue sharing and not putting it into the team are a bigger problem. But
Yeah.
I'm going to take it to another level here. We just witnessed the best World Series we've seen in a long time. We've seen some really good World Series, but this one had 3 classic games in it and a bunch of drama. We also saw a postseason chock-full of drama with the final game between the Tigers and the Mariners, that extra inning greatness. The series between Toronto and Seattle was fantastic. You had the Ohtani game where he came out. You had the Aaron Judge game where he gave Yankee fans a great thrill. You saw, the come from behind wins by the Mariners one day, the Blue Jays, and then this finale, this absolute, just fantastic finale that we had of one of the greatest Game 7s we will ever see. I think that, and a superstar that has the world's attention. We haven't had a baseball superstar like this
Exactly right.
in generations.
Exactly
you may
right.
point to certain players who may have better stats, this, better stats, that.
Doesn't matter.
A player who has captured everyone's imagination. The fact that people will watch the freaking World Baseball Classic, which a couple of years ago were just spring training games. And everyone watched these. I'm a little biased because I'm living in LA County. Yeah. I think the Dodgers are part of what are going to save baseball. And there's a generation who will see this World Series and fall in love with it. Travis Rogers, you have the floor.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Sully. I think that what the Dodgers are doing is what every fan base would hope that their team does, that they have an owner that spends money to put a premium product on the field.
And spends money smartly.
Exactly.
Not
right.
the Mets.
No, it's not this drunken sailor spending where all, just who's the most, I'll take one of those and one of these. They're actually pretty judicious in how they go about it. I mentioned a second ago, the guys that they give all this money to are as close to sure things as exist in baseball. Now, there is no sure thing, but giving Ohtani a lot of money, pretty smart deal. Giving Mookie Betts a lot of money, not a crazy decision. Giving Freddie Freeman a lot of money, maybe they took a little bit of a flyer on Yamamoto having never played here, but looks like they got that one right. You go to Dodger games, I go to Dodger game. You go through and they want $22 for a can of Modelo, but at least 11 of it goes back onto the field. Right. That's the idea that I think everybody would like. That's number one. And number two, I think you hit an incredibly important point. For the first time in, I don't know how long, it's been a long, long, long time. They have somebody in the sport that non-baseball people know about and are interested in. You love baseball. I love baseball. We'll talk about Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez and these guys, and they were great players, and it's great. But if you asked your grandmother about Derek Jeter, she's like, what? Huh? But if you ask them about Shohei Ohtani, they know who he is. They want to know what he's up to. It isn't, like you mentioned, it's an international phenomenon. They have the attention of non-baseball people for the first time in a long time. The numbers bear it out. The television ratings bear it out. The sport is as healthy as it has been in a really long time. I always, if you don't like the economics of the baseball, have your guy put the team up for sale. There will be a billionaire who wants to buy that team. It's a really hard club to get into. And the second they go on the block, they sell for more than they were worth when they bought them the first time. And they can put this money back into these teams if they want to do it. They just choose not to do it. The idea of these deferred payments ruining baseball, it's not a new rule. It's been going on forever. The Dodgers have just utilized it to a degree that's helped them more than it has other people. And what you said, I think, is the one thing that gives me a little bit of optimism about avoiding a work stoppage moving forward. I think these guys realize this is as healthy as it's been, and to shut it down now would be the dumbest thing that you could come up with, because the money is flowing. Maybe it's not flowing the way that they want it to exactly, but it's flowing. And to shut it down for nothing. And look, the players union, they're 1 million and 0 against the owners. They don't lose. They will not budge. So now, can you put some guardrails in it? Sure, go ahead. I don't really care about that.
And they have.
Exactly. And so I don't think the Dodgers have ruined baseball. I think that they've helped baseball. I think that this is the dreams, the smartest people with the most money, with the prestigious, organization where people want to come, or at least some people want to come in the Los Angeles. Other people avoid it because it's Los Angeles.
Fine.
Great. And this is what you hope your owner would do. Don't get mad because someone cracked the code with smart people and a lot of money.
And the other thing, there's two other things. First of all, you're right. Like, we've seen great stars have great careers. Okay, you're in Orange County. The 2010s, Mike Trout was the best player in baseball. He played 3 more postseason games than I did, and they didn't know what they did. He wasn't marketed. He didn't capture anyone's attention outside of the baseball world. Rickey Henderson was one of the most dynamic, one of the greatest offensive players in the history of baseball.
Yep.
Baseball fans, loved him. Outside of baseball, I think he stole a few bases. I don't know much about him. Yeah. The Griffey Jr. was huge amongst baseball fans, but never made it past that. And a big reason I believe that Griffey and Bonds and and Frank Thomas, those players who were big stars in the 90s, didn't make it because there was such an adversarial relationship between owners and players that they didn't want them to become, a Jordan-like superstar. Heck, there wasn't anyone who scratched Allen Iverson's popularity.
No way.
And I've never seen in my lifetime, I've seen big baseball stars. I've seen stars who are really famous, okay? But I've never seen anyone who transcended it the way Ohtani has.
And Sully, I'm sorry to cut you off, but
I cut you off earlier.
It's happening because he's with the Dodgers. He was in Anaheim for 6 years. Now, people knew who he was, and people knew that he was a special guy, a two-way guy. But it wasn't until you put him on the postseason stage, it wasn't until you put him with a marquee Tiffany franchise where everybody went, wait, what is that? Because he was winning MVPs in Anaheim. But like you said, he didn't play in one game past the All-Star break that anybody paid any attention to because they were buried in the standings. But you put him on one of these teams that everybody's paying attention to, and it blew up into what it is.
And last thought on that is, bring it back to movies for a second. The best adventure movies, the best action movies, the best Bond films, the best Die Hard films, best Marvel films, whatever, are the ones that have the best villain. Yeah. And you may not want to hear this, but 29 fan bases hate the Dodgers' guts. And I saw 29 fan bases hate the Yankees' guts. Hell, there's no musical called Damn Brewers. And I saw when the Red Sox and Yankees were treating the free agent market the same way Rodney Dangerfield did when he went to the pro shop in Caddyshack, to then come through. Oh, that's the worst hat I've ever saw. I will make an up-to-date reference eventually. Everyone hated the Red Sox and Yankees, but having a villain filling the stadium to beat the Dodgers, filling the stadium to defeat Shohei Ohtani is huge. And I'm telling you, when we have Locked On MLB in the year 2045, we will find people who were 7, 8, 9 years old now said, I became a baseball fan watching this era of baseball, and this will turn a lot of people onto it. And to cut that, to turn off that spigot is an act of lunacy.
Yes.
But what is not an act of lunacy is bringing Travis Rogers onto the show. I'm going to give you the last word.
It was an incredible year. It was an incredible year after an incredible year. I cannot wait for 2026. I'm cautiously optimistic that we will get baseball uninterrupted after that. But in the event that I'm wrong, which, believe it or not, has happened before, I would love to see it with the Dodgers ending 3 in a row and really send people into a tailspin when there's no baseball, knowing that the Dodgers have sit on a hat trick.
There you go. Well, look at. By the way, I want to thank everyone here for making us your first listen. And let's talk a little bit about the Everydayer Club, shall we? And if you want to have ring in the new year, with a gift. You know what? You got to make it easy. You want to ask for an Everydayer Club, ad-free episodes of the show, exclusive Discord server access, and more. Subscriptions can be gifted through the link we have in the show notes. And look have this be part of your New Year's resolution. You're going to lose weight. You're going to write that novel. You're going to patch things up with your family, and you're going to listen to Locked On MLB and Locked On Dodgers every single day. All right. If you're listening to this on New Year's Day, sync this up to 11:59 and 50 seconds. Okay, ready? Go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! It's 2026, and the Dodgers will just be barely beaten by a millimeter by the Pirates in the NLCS. You heard it here first. Talking about 2025 as we roll into 2026 with Travis Rogers of Locked On Dodgers. It's been a Locked On MLB, Locked On Dodgers crossover. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.